Hello Isabel, I've got another story for you today which is called The Dormouse and the Fairy from my book called Tales of Green Hedges. So here we go. Once upon a time there was a little fat dormouse with a soft coat and a waffly nose. He was looking for a good place to go to sleep for the cold days of winter, and at last he found one. It wasn't really a very good place, but the dormouse didn't know that. It was a greenhouse, inside a plant pot that was turned on its side. A few dead leaves had blown inside, and it felt warm and cosy in there. The dormouse sniffed around a bit and decided that it'd be a splendid place for a winter's sleep. So into the pot he crept, covered himself up with the leaves, put his nose between his front paws and went to sleep. The frost came, but it didn't get inside the plant pot. The snow came, but there was none inside the old greenhouse. The little dormouse might have slept there all winter if the gardener hadn't suddenly thought of painting the house inside out. Before he painted it, he tidied it up. He took all the pots and saucers and cleaned them. He set them up in a row, and then, as he worked, he came to the one where the little dormouse slept. He took it up. He saw the dormouse inside. "Oh, a dozy mouse," he said. "Well, I never. Are you the little rascal that nibbles my plants in the spring?" He shook out the little dormouse, and the poor sleepy thing woke up with a dreadful jump. Somehow he opened his eyes and made his legs work. Somehow he staggered to a safe corner and hid himself in a hole. Oh, my, thought the little dormouse. "This is dreadful. I've been wakened out of my winter sleep. Whatever shall I do? I'd better get out of this greenhouse at once, before that gardener finds me and kills me." So he crawled out of the hole in the wooden side of the greenhouse and ran into the garden. But it was a bitterly cold winter's day, and the little dormouse felt as if he were freezing. "Oh, it's just too cold," he said to himself as he tried to run to and fro to keep himself warm. Now as he ran about he heard a sound of crying. It was a little sound, and rather like the leaves of trees sighing in the wind. The dormouse listened. It came from the other side of the hedge. He went through the hedge to find out what it was. And there, curled up on the frosty grass, was a small fairy, not even as big as himself. She had on a dress made of cobwebs, and she was shivering with the cold. "What's the matter?" asked the dormouse. "Have you been awakened from your winter sleep too?" "No," said the fairy, "but my warm coat and my warm shawl have been taken away from me. A goblin came along and took them, and he took the blankets from my bed too." Here's a picture for you. There's the dormouse and the fairy. "And he broke my bed into bits. It was the half of a prickly horse chestnut case, and was so comfortable. Now I don't know what to do." Oh, no, you'll be all right," said the dormouse, putting a paw comfortably round her. "I'll take care of you. I've been wakened from my winter sleep, and I've got nowhere to go either, so we'll look after each other." "Oh, you poor thing," cried the fairy. "Of course, dormice always sleep in the winter. I quite forgot. Oh dear, we really must find a place to sleep, or you'll be very ill indeed. Let me help you." Well, of course, if people help each other, they soon manage to do something. The two of them began to hunt for a good place to sleep in, and whatever do you suppose they found? They found an old doll's bed belonging to the little girl who lived in the house nearby. It was a very tiny bed indeed, and was very old and rusty. It had belonged to her doll's house, but because it had been left out in the rain and was rusty, the little girl had thrown it away in a rubbish heap. But there it was, still, rustier than ever, with no blankets or pillows, but still it was a bed. "Look," cried the fairy, pulling at the bed. "A proper bed. This will do nicely for us." "But I've never slept in a bed," said the dormouse, doubtfully. "Oh, that doesn't matter," said the fairy. "I'll soon show you how comfortable it is. Help me to pull it under the hedge, where we shall be sheltered from the wind." "I really do prefer a hole of some sort to sleep in," said the dormouse. "Well, you can't possibly find a hole in all this hard frosty weather," said the fairy, shivering. "I do wish I could find a coat." So they put the bed under the hedge, and then they set to work to find bedclothes for it. The Dormouse knew where there was some moss under the snow, for he remembered it from the summer before. So he scraped away down to it and pulled at it with his mouth. He gave the fairy quite a lot. She was delighted. She borrowed a needle from the fairy tailor, asked a hidden spider for some thread, and made herself a coat of moss and 2 blankets for the bed. She really was very clever. The Dormouse found some dead leaves. They may seem dry and thin to you, he said, but they're very warm to sleep in. Shall we have them as well? Oh, yes, said the fairy, and from 1 leaf she made herself a bonnet and 2 sheets for the bed. Then the Dormouse found some old thistles, still with their soft thistledown in their seed boxes. He pulled out the down and gave it to the fairy. She squealed with delight. You're really clever at finding things, she said. This will do for our pillows, and a mattress too, and if there's enough, I can make an eiderdown. There was just enough, so very soon there was a soft mattress on the bed, a soft pillow stuffed with thistledown, an eiderdown made of the skin of some hips, stuffed with the down. Really, it was perfect. The sun sank, the world grew bitterly cold, the frost came creeping again over the fields, and the Dormouse and the fairy shivered. It's time for bed, said the fairy. Come, Dormouse, see, you can sleep in a bed. She showed him how to climb in under the blankets. Soon his soft little body was lying in the bed, and his waffly nose was on the pillow. He felt warm and comfortable. You're as good as a hot water bottle, she said. It's nice to have one another, isn't it? Good night, little Dormouse. Sleep tight. The Dormouse was already asleep. But you know he's still asleep, for the warm days haven't wakened him up yet. There he lies in his little bed. But the fairy wakes every day. She's looking for a tiny house for them to live in when he wakes up. Won't the Dormouse be surprised when he opens his eyes and sees the little house? Mind you, don't disturb him if you find him. Just turn back the blanket and have a look at him, and then cover him up again warmly, won't you? And that's the end of the story.